In the year 793, a quiet monastery on the English coast was attacked by men who seemed to come from nowhere. They arrived across the sea in long wooden ships, moved quickly, took what they wanted, and disappeared before anyone could stop them. For the people of Europe, it felt like the beginning of a nightmare. These men were the Vikings. They came from the cold lands of Scandinavia, from what we now call Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Their homeland was small, harsh, and far from the wealthy kingdoms of Europe. They did not have a giant empire. They did not have huge cities or a powerful central government. Yet for almost 300 years, they changed the history of Europe. So how did a small northern people become one of the most feared forces in the medieval world? The answer begins with geography. Scandinavia was a land of long winters, rocky mountains, deep forests, and narrow coastal valleys. Farming was difficult in many places. Good land was limited, and communities were often separated by mountains, forests, or the sea. But the sea was not a barrier to the Vikings. It was their road. While many European kingdoms depended on slow travel over rough roads, the Vikings learned to move across water faster than almost anyone else. Their greatest weapon was not an axe, a sword, or a shield. It was the longship. Viking longships were light, narrow, and incredibly fast. They could cross dangerous seas, but they could also travel through shallow rivers. This gave the Vikings an advantage that other armies did not have. They could sail directly to a coastal village, attack a monastery, travel up a river, and suddenly appear deep inside enemy territory. Europe had never seen anything quite like it. The first famous Viking raid took place at Lindisfarne, a monastery in northern England. Monasteries were rich targets. They had gold, silver, food, books, and valuable religious objects. More importantly, they were often poorly defended. The Vikings understood this quickly. They did not need to conquer a country to become rich. They only needed to strike where people were unprepared. After Lindisfarne, Viking raids became more common. They attacked Ireland, Scotland, England, France, Spain, and even parts of Italy. Villages near rivers and coastlines lived in fear. People knew that at any moment, strange ships could appear on the horizon. But the Vikings were not successful only because they were violent. They were successful because Europe was divided. At that time, Europe was made up of many small kingdoms, local rulers, and rival nobles. England itself was divided into several Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. France was still struggling after the collapse of Charlemagne's empire. Many rulers were busy fighting their neighbors. When the Vikings attacked, there was often no united army ready to stop them. The Vikings used this weakness perfectly. At first, they came only to raid. They attacked quickly and returned home with treasure. But over time, they realized something important. Why keep sailing back to Scandinavia every year when they could stay in the lands they were attacking? So the raids slowly became invasions. In England, Viking armies began taking control of large areas. Danish Vikings captured much of the eastern part of the country. This region later became known as the Danelaw because Viking laws and customs were used there. For a time, it looked like England might completely fall to the Vikings. One king who fought back was Alfred of Wessex, later known as Alfred the Great. He faced Viking invasions when much of England had already been conquered. Alfred survived, rebuilt his army, created stronger defenses, and began fighting back. His victory did not end the Viking threat, but it helped save the idea of an English kingdom. Still, the Vikings continued to grow stronger. They were not only raiders, they were also settlers, traders, explorers, and warriors. Viking ships carried them across Europe and far beyond it. They traveled east through the rivers of Russia and Ukraine, reaching the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic world. They traded furs, amber, iron, and slaves for silver, silk, spices, and other goods. Some Vikings even served as elite guards for the Byzantine emperors in Constantinople. These warriors were known as the Varangian Guard. Men from the cold north were standing guard for the emperor of one of the richest cities in the world. The Vikings also traveled west. Norwegian Vikings settled in Iceland. They reached Greenland. And around the year 1000, Viking explorers led by Leif Erikson reached North America, nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus. This is one of the most surprising parts of Viking history. The people Europe feared as raiders were also among the greatest explorers of their age. Viking society was not united. There was no single Viking king controlling everyone. Different groups came from different parts of Scandinavia. Some raided, some traded, some settled peacefully, some fought each other. Over time, the same kingdoms that had once been weak began to become stronger. England built better defenses. France gave land to Viking leaders, hoping they would protect the coast from other Viking attacks. One of these Viking leaders was Rollo, who was given land in northern France. That land became Normandy. The descendants of these Vikings later became some of the most powerful people in Europe. In 1066, William the Conqueror, the Duke of Normandy, invaded England and changed English history forever. In a strange way, the Viking story did not end when the raids ended. It continued through the kingdoms and cultures they helped create. Back in Scandinavia, change was also coming. Viking rulers began accepting Christianity. Small tribal societies slowly became larger kingdoms. Denmark, Norway, and Sweden became more organized and more connected to the rest of Europe. By the 11th century, the age of Viking raids was coming to an end. The final great moment often linked to the Viking Age came in 1066. A Norwegian king named Harald Hardrada invaded England. He was defeated at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Just weeks later, England faced another invasion from William of Normandy. The old Viking world was fading, but its influence was everywhere. The Vikings had terrorized Europe because they were fast, adaptable, and fearless. They used the sea like a highway. They attacked divided kingdoms. They learned from every place they reached. And when raiding was no longer enough, they settled, traded, ruled, and built new societies. They were not simply savage warriors wearing horned helmets. In fact, Vikings probably did not wear horned helmets in battle at all. That image came much later. The real Vikings were more complicated than the legend. They were farmers, shipbuilders, merchants, explorers, poets, rulers, and fighters. They brought destruction to many communities, but they also connected distant parts of the world. From the monasteries of England to the rivers of Eastern Europe, from the ice of Greenland to the shores of North America, the Vikings left their mark. A small northern people changed Europe because they understood one powerful idea. Whoever controls movement can change history. And for the Vikings, the sea was the key to the world. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Atlas Archive for more hidden stories behind history, geography, and the maps that shaped our world.